Good afternoon. I'm talking to Madene Shachar today. Madene is very busy, so I know she has presentations to do today as well, which I can only recommend, which I'll also be forwarding at some stage. But yeah, Madene, we're just going to get right through it. Just tell us a small bit about you and what your work is at the Ghetto House, at the Ghetto Fighters House Museum, and what does it do?
Okay. First of all, Dirk, it's glad to see you. See you almost physically, right? And thank you for this invitation to speak with you. I've been working at the Ghetto Fighters House for the past 23 years, and the Ghetto Fighters House was established in 1949. It was established by a large group of Holocaust survivors. And at the same date that they established the museum, they actually established a kibbutz in the Western Galilee. So we're talking about April 19th, 1949. They wanted to commemorate the 6th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And so they chose that date. Some of the survivors themselves had been a part of the uprising or were in the Jewish Fighting Organization in Warsaw or part of the youth movement Dror. All of these connections brought them together before, during, and after the war. And so the museum is actually a part of a larger kibbutz community in the Western Galilee. The cornerstone was put down for the museum the same day the kibbutz was established by pitching tents by an ancient Turkish aqueduct. And since the opening of the museum, the goal was always to tell the story of family and friends and communities that were lost during the Holocaust, to be a place to commemorate, but also a place to educate future generations. They always saw the museum as a place where they wanted the young generation to come and learn about the Holocaust, but also the Jewish community that lived in Europe before the Holocaust.
Okay, yeah, it's important to have those stories anyhow. But since this is something I hear a lot. Sorry, about the Holocaust. People say, "Well, it's the 21st century. Why are we still talking about it?" So, why is it still important in the 21st century that we still talk about the Holocaust? And should it be educated maybe in, well, I say, I'm not going to say school curriculum, but education curriculum, but not just schools, but maybe also universities, or should we forget about it? I mean, I know what chance it's going to be, but just give you, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I just want to add that on April 19th, 1949, the establishment of the kibbutz and the cornerstone of the museum was also the first Holocaust Remembrance Day that they established. And that date has become the official date. They use the Hebrew date, but that's the official date that we recognize the Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, based on the date of the uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. The uprising took place on the first day of Passover, which is a very important Jewish holiday here and around the world. So they didn't want to mix the two together. So we added a few days, and it's always 5 days, 6 days after Passover. So that was that's the first part of my answer. I think that we, as second and third and now fourth and fifth generation, we have a responsibility to continue what the survivors knew in their heart, and they knew from their own experience, that if we don't tell the story of the Holocaust, it will be forgotten. And what happened when a democracy was destroyed will be lost. And in many ways, the Holocaust is a unique event. It's really one of the most tragic and terrible and darkest moments of human history. There have been other genocides, one before and many after. So have we really learned anything? But the point is that they knew that if they didn't continue to talk about what happened, to document, to have an archive, a very vast archive, there would be a time where, first of all, people would deny it happening, which happened. And now we've become more advanced, so you don't deny, it's just distorted. And we see examples around Europe today, where, in Poland, there are new laws and regulations about teaching about the Holocaust. There are new paths that you have to take if you want to bring an Israeli group on a journey to Poland. You have to visit specific museums that have a specific narrative. So we see that no matter what we think or maybe want, we have to continue talking about the Holocaust. Now, should it be in the school curriculum? Obviously, in Israel, it's a very important part of the curriculum that was never part of the official curriculum until 2014, which is very interesting. But I know that in the United States, more and more states are passing laws. We also see what happens in the states when anti-Semitism is allowed, when you have a very politically right government. These types of racist organizations pop their head out of the ground and they start working. And we continue to see the effects even today, even though we now have a more left or central winged government there. We still see the rippling effect of a very extreme right wing government. And we see that it happening in Poland. We see it happening in Hungary. And so continuing to talk about the Holocaust, about democracy, about human rights, I think these are things that we apparently, as human beings, are always going to have to talk about, because there are always going to be human beings that are trying to take these rights away from others. And unfortunately, we see that happening in Israel today as well.
Yeah, well, actually, I'll come back to that later later on. But yeah, and I mean, I see it myself as well, because as you know, I do write a lot about the Holocaust, and yes, it is
Right.
it is important. But I don't think that anti-Semitism has always been there. It just last decade or so, I think, is kind of resurfaced a small bit. It has been dormant for a few years, and that's kind of resurfaced a small bit. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely right. So, but do you have your own personal connection to the Holocaust? Have you lost family members, or is there any other connection there?
Well, first of all, I did not know about a family connection. My parents were first generation Americans. Their parents, actually, my mother was second generation. Their parents came over from Belarus, Lithuania, and Russia at the turn of the 20th century because of the pogroms, obviously. And so they left for a better life in America. Also, for my husband's family, there was some family that came after the Holocaust that were living in Europe, especially Germany. Later, I discovered through a book that was written about my father's family that we actually did have family that survived the Holocaust, others that didn't, but I don't have a direct connection. I think the most maybe important connection that I have is that by working at the Ghetto Fighters House, I discovered that some of the founders that were part of the uprising and the underground in Warsaw actually lived on the kibbutz beforehand. They were in 3 different groups, the survivors that started the kibbutz, and they went to 3 different kibbutzim. One of them came to Yagur, where I live, and they spent the first 3 years here. So I think Tzivia Lebenkin and Antik Zuckerman and Chavka Rabban Fulman, that are 3 really major characters in this story. In Israel, the names are very well known. It's very cool to know that we have that history of having them stay on Kibbutz Yagur and having that connection. So I really don't have a family connection, but I feel like the kibbutz family definitely has that connection.
Okay, you mentioned. Okay, that's great. You mentioned
the different connection.
Yeah. I mean, ones I posted, I have to do a bit of a backstory with as well, because not everyone will be aware. But I mean, right. That's even better, because it will trigger people. Hang on, I have to look this up. But that's what my story is. I don't want to give people too much information. I want them to look for information. I think that's the best way of educating people as well. But you mentioned currently Israel at the moment. Well, there has been some political turmoil in Israel as of late, and I'm just wondering, and the reason why I'm asking this because I've seen protests around the globe on TV, but also here in Ireland, where Israel is called an apartheid state. Now, does this affect anything, any education about the Holocaust as well? So I think people might use that also, saying, well, listen, what they're doing now, I haven't heard people say this, but what they're doing in Israel is akin to what they did in Germany, which of course it isn't. But yeah, what is your point on that? What is your viewpoint on that?
Well, first of all, I think that when we educate about the Holocaust, it becomes very apparent that you can't make those types of associations. I don't need to justify if Israel is a apartheid or not, because Mandela himself did it. He said Israel is not an apartheid. So I don't think I am an expert. I think also, for some reason, and I don't know why, we are really bad in Israel as far as outreach and public relations. For some reason, we let these things slide. We don't come up with the right information. I know that when I was growing up in the United States, going to university in the 1980s, we didn't have these challenges on the campus where, you know, different groups were saying that other groups were this or that. Of course, I was more naive in the 1980s, and things were happening. For example, there was apartheid in South Africa at that time, and I was not aware myself, and there was no one on my campus saying anything about that. I think it's important to bring to light things that are important for us to know, when minorities or even majorities, are being are put in danger. But what's happening today is this feeling that you don't need to check too much. You said you don't want your audience to know too much, or that they'll go check. And I don't think that we have this deep critical thinking that maybe we taught in college, for example, when I was in university in the 1980s. I think that people just, no matter who says it, if somebody says something and they're your friend or you just agree with them, you don't check the facts. And that's very disappointing. I think that it allows for the distortion of the Holocaust, and it allows for people to say that we're apartheid. Now, on the other hand, part of the protesters in Israel today are saying you can't have a democracy if you have an occupation. And there are people in Israel that say that, the Gaza Strip, it's occupied, and it's more complex than that. There is, a very difficult situation in Israel. But I can definitely understand the protesters saying you can't talk about democracy when, 2 million people are under our rule, technically, and they don't have the same rights, as opposed to Palestinians that have full rights that live in Israel.
Yeah.
It's not occupied. So it's more complex than just, it's an apartheid, right? But we have to be very aware of, what's being said and how to answer. And also, take responsibility for what we do, right? I think that's probably something that we don't see enough of. I think the story of the reporter that was shot, and the reports that are going out, and the Israeli army doing an investigation and admitting that the bullet probably came from our side. Those types of things are very rare in other countries that may call themselves democracies, but a democracy also has to be willing to be open to criticism. I just don't think we're doing it right. I just don't think that we have the right spokespeople, and it's become very frustrating, I think. Once someone visits the country, and there are people here working day and night to have groups visit not only Israel, but also go to Palestinian territories and have a more broader understanding of what's happening, then people begin to understand exactly what Israel is. I don't think people really understand what the Syrian border means, or what it means to live on the border with the Gaza Strip. They think that we're like the United States or something, this huge country. They just don't understand that it's only a 10-kilometer width, right? And so I think for many people, once they come to visit, they walk in the shoes of the Israeli people. They begin to maybe understand a little better what how complex the situation is. But I think I really appreciate people that are out there, saying we have to do tours that include the Palestinian territories as well, and to meet with Palestinians. All my Arab friends that identify as Palestinian are Palestinian in my eye, and I consider them my Palestinian friends. I never say, but you're in Israel, you're an Israeli. If you say you're Palestinian, and I'm talking about adults as well as children. I met a young girl that goes to a Jewish public school, and she said, I'm a Palestinian. She had to say it quietly. And I said, that's fine. That's wonderful. Thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
So,
but that's something we don't hear too often here in Europe. They think there's a clear divide between Palestinians and Israel, and they don't realize that actually Palestinians go to schools in Israel as well. They think that there's no, that doesn't happen, and that's something I try to tell people. Well, hang on, it's not as I said. It's more complex than just saying it's
much more complex.
Black and white.
We just had friends over from Canada.
Yeah,
and they live half the year here, half the year in Canada. And they're retired. And we were just talking, they had no idea that I was coming on this program or anything. And suddenly they said, Israeli medicine is the best. And our best doctors are Arab Israelis. He said they saved my wife's life. She couldn't walk, and she got something done in Toronto, and they made mistakes. And then here in Israel, the two doctors that she went to, one was Arab and one was Jewish, said the best treatment ever. And it really, I never really considered that thing that I need to talk about. If I go to a doctor, I go to a doctor, he's good or he's bad. I never said, oh, he's Arab or, oh, he's Jewish. I just don't care, literally don't care. And I've been here for 40 years, so I've had all from everything. So
the only things that matter, he's a doctor. That's
yeah. Be a good doctor, okay? I want to I want to get you on time, and I want to listen to me.
Regardless what you are, but
exactly.
Do you think though that what is your opinion on the portrayal of Israel in the media? Not so much Israeli media, but American media, Western European media. Because as I said, I notice that there's not much of a balance. Do you notice that yourself as well?
I think that a lot of times it's kind of interesting to see that it's usually the right wing that is pro-Israel, which is not very good for us in general, because they also have extreme opinions, and so that's kind of interesting, right? But I know, again, when I grew up in the United States, I was younger. When I went back to the States and lived there in my 30s for 3 years, I remember we would watch the news, because we're very news oriented in Israel, and they'd say in-depth report. Wait for the in-depth report about whatever subject, and we would wait for the in-depth report. An in-depth report in Israel could be a 10 to 15 or 20-minute report about something, or a whole program. And we're sitting at TV and we're waiting for the in-depth report, and it's about 3 minutes long. And we're sitting back and we're saying, that's called in-depth? That's like that's like a trailer. So I think that in many ways in American culture, they really don't know what an in-depth investigation is. I don't think that they know how to connect the dots between, the geopolitical situation in Israel and the Middle East. I don't think in America specifically they ever understood the Middle East. They always got it wrong with the Arab Spring and whatever it may be. So there's just something very, very disconnected when you try to understand a culture that is very different from your own. And listen, we have the same problem within Israel. I think that one of the big issues right now in Israel, not all the political things, is that a lot of women are being murdered in Israel now. It's a very big thing, and a lot is happening in the Arab community, and they're outraged that there's no solution. We're not finding a solution. This government is completely, doesn't care. And so one of the things that we know is that in Arab culture, there are what are they called in English? I don't want to say I can't remember the word in English. It's like for being proud, killing because maybe the woman did something to disgrace the family.
Honor killings, I think they're called.
Honor, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the same, many times they'll report themselves to the police afterwards. They don't hide or anything like that. But there is still these honor killings in Arab culture, and we have to be aware of that there are things that in the Middle East are very, very different. So I'm just giving you an example from within Israel. Imagine trying to understand the geopolitical situation in Israel when you have no idea or you've never been out of the borders of the United States, for example. Right? Europe is another situation. Europe has the whole European Union that they have to deal with. One of the first things my husband said very wisely many, many years ago when they wanted to create the EU is that you're going to see a lot of nationalism coming up after that. And that's what we see today, right? It's like a ricochet, right? You expected something else and he knew it all along, that when you try to bring different people together, you usually end up showing just how different they want to be from each other. So with Europe, I think it's a different situation.
That's a very valid point, by the way, and that's something I've said before. I mean, I'm totally pro EU. Don't get me wrong, but I did say that there is a danger that is going to be very nationalist, and you see that. I've seen it in the Netherlands, I've seen it in Ireland, to a less extent than the Eastern European countries. For some reason, there's a different mindset there all together. So, but yeah, and I think the whole EU, it happened too fast. I think there should have been a bit more time.
Yeah, it was a good idea that, like communism and socialism, right? It was a great idea, but it was executed the wrong way.
Yeah.
Apparently, but yeah, I mean, listen, nobody talks about Switzerland. I remember many years ago, I met someone from Switzerland. He came from India, I think. His sister was living in Switzerland, and he came to live in Switzerland. They made him, he couldn't choose where to live. He couldn't choose where to live. He was told in which neighborhood he could live. He could not live in the same neighborhood with his sister because they already had enough Indians there. Nobody talks about that.
No.
Right? I never even heard of telling people where they can live and not live. Right? Some people choose to live in a specific area, but telling them, no, you can't live in that block because nobody talks about that. How other countries deal with their minorities. So there goes that.
It's even this. I'm kind of I kind of diverting a small bit, but I have this from my own personal experience as well. Even when my wife was over the Netherlands, she had to report to immigration every 3 months because yes, she was an EU citizen, but she wasn't Dutch.
Right.
And she still had to report every 3 months, like anyone else coming in from the different. The only thing is she could move. She was free to work. Yeah. She didn't need a visa, and that's people don't often realize that either. But yeah. No, and I don't want to divert too much, but so, again, coming back to Israel at the moment, it's I think even though it's probably a bit the ceasefire has happened now, so but there have been quite a lot of attacks on Israel as well from jihadis, and how do people in Israel experience that? That's something we can't understand here, I suppose.
No, I have to say that Israelis, they are crazy people, right? I think that my son and his family, they lived really on the Gaza Strip for a few years, and they were in the shelter almost every day. And whenever they came to visit us, if they heard an airplane or sometimes you'd hear like a motorcycle go boom or something, my granddaughter would go crazy. Like, what is that? What is that? On the other hand, going to school, her kindergarten has, we call it a mushroom. They have this huge cement mushroom over the outdoor play area. And it's just a completely different place. The whole landscape is different than what happens in Tel Aviv or Haifa or Jerusalem. All the way down south, they have these little protective things. They look like a bus station or maybe a little bathroom or something. And they all have beautiful drawings and graffiti all over them, but they actually are shelters in case there's a bombing. You can stop your car and go into them. And this is just the natural landscape of the Negev area. My granddaughter was not in school for 5 days, and she doesn't even live in the area where there were bombings, but she lives in the region.
Okay.
So it just is a part of life down there. Now, I don't want to go political, but absolutely, the government before this government had a plan, and this government doesn't have a plan. And so the attacks are just exaggerated, exponentially.
Yeah.
And and yet, if you ask people that live in Sderot, which is a main city down south, they will still go right wing. They still vote right wing. So it's really hard for us up here in the north to understand what's going on for years. And again, once Israel left we call it the Gush area, once they left the area that is now occupied, the Gaza Strip, once we left that part of the country, there was no plan. It was a good idea. It was executed badly. And so now we have all these attacks that we didn't have beforehand. And so it's just a big question mark. I think that Israelis in general are just a very tense people. In general, you can see it when you drive down the street. And I think that's a shame. I think that we always, have to know where the closest shelter is, no matter where we are. We all have to know how to drive in a car and get out of it in case there's an attack wherever we are. And we also know how to help each other. When there's attack in one part of the country, the other part of the country opens its doors and just says, come stay with us. And so it's all together. It's just, I think we're too accepting, but yeah, it's that Jewish hospitality.
Yes, but that's positive as well, though, in a way. So I mean, you wouldn't see that in the other countries, though. You wouldn't see that willingness to help each other. It's more like, well, I close my door rather than
Exactly.
open it up.
And by the way, these bombs don't know, or these rockets don't know who's Jewish and who's Arab. And unfortunately, many times the people that are being injured, not to mention the Palestinians on the Palestinian side that are, being affected, but also bombs that, hit areas, and it can suddenly be a Christian family or a Muslim family. And nobody remembers that, we all live more or less together. So it's not just attacking the Jews, right? It's attacking all Israelis.
But this is probably going to be a very difficult question for you to answer. But why is it, though? Why is that? Why do these bombings occur? I mean, I kind of know why, but and I can't understand that. So, but would you have some? Because you're nearer there than I am, of course. But so
there are just so many reasons why. I don't think there's one reason why. I think what I want to say is this: the Palestinian people are trapped not by Israeli occupation. Of course, Israeli occupation is a part of it. They're trapped by their own people. They're trapped by the Arab nations. They're trapped by Jordan, where the majority of Palestinians live. They're being forced to live in these refugee camps. They have nobody wants them anywhere. And I think that that's the biggest problem, if not to mention that when you're in that type of situation, you can be taken advantage of. It's not just Hamas now, it's the jihadistim, and they don't care about human life. They care about jihad, and they care about Muhammad, and they care about, whatever their religious war is, and they don't care about the people on the ground. And I think that's a very different look at life, because I wish that we could offer something different. We had a prime minister assassinated because of what we were trying to do, right? Opening airports, opening schools, getting money in. By the way, the right, that's their big thing. The left is giving money to the Palestinians, and this is what we get: rockets. No, the money's coming from Qatar. It's not, it's just ridiculous. And so I think really I don't have an answer one answer why. I'm just saying that the real victims here, the real victims are the Palestinian people. They are under siege more than anyone. They live in poverty, except for those that have the money and live in the villas, right? But the everyday people are suffering because other people are making decisions for them, and they're being told a narrative that puts all the blame on us. But if you get the opportunity to talk with Palestinians, to listen to what they have to say, they if they could live on the other side of the border, they'd be here in a minute.
Yeah, I mean,
that's for sure.
That's a good point.
No Palestinian wants to go there.
Yeah, exactly.
No Palestinian living in Israel wants to go live there.
Yeah, and that's a point that's often missed in the media here, and also the fact that you mentioned there that it's not, the occupation isn't just Israel; it's the other nations surrounding as well. Like, I mean, I've said it before. Egypt has blockades as well. Same with Jordan, and that's
absolutely
often, I don't know if it's deliberately but it's missed in the media here. And I think that's a good point that you brought up there.
Absolutely, and they aren't humanistic, right? So if they catch someone at the border, they don't ask questions. Exactly.
Okay, now I've just one more question for you, and that's just how can people contribute to the good work of the Ghetto Fighters House?
First of all, anyone who's coming to visit Israel, please get in touch with us and come visit. That's one thing. Secondly, we have a website, and you can visit us there and learn a little bit more about our programming. Obviously, learn more about the Talking Memory program that I understand you'll let them know, which is our outreach to the world. And of course, if anybody wants to donate, we have a donate page somewhere in the website. And you can always get in touch with us to help support our programs. We do programs both within Israel and also outside of Israel. We have new digital programs that we're doing around the world. So we're definitely trying to do more outreach and have our programs available to other countries around the world. We just started a digital interactive program about the Warsaw Ghetto and the uprising, but also we have a program about Denmark, and we're recognizing the 80th anniversary of the Great Escape from Denmark to Sweden. So we also have a program about that. So, you can find all that information on our webpage and find information about our educational programs too.
What's the webpage? If you can give us it there. Is it
GF? Ghetto Fighters House. Yeah, I mean, it's gfh.org, I think, .il, and then you have to do English. I just write Ghetto Fighters House website, and it goes straight to the English. So that's easier, I think.
That's fine, because I think it's because I've seen some of your presentations. I've been present, and it's fantastic. Yeah. Really, it's some of it is really chilling, I have to say, but it's extremely important that we just continue this. So, Madene,
you're our emissary. You get the word out about the programs, and you interview some of the guests, and I think that's an amazing partnership that we have with you, Dirk. That otherwise, how would we have met, right? So I'm really happy about the people that I'm meeting, and hopefully, when you come to Israel, I'll get to meet you physically as well.
I'll be there. But thanks, Madene. It was great to talk to you, and I'll probably see you later today, anyhow.
Yeah, I'll look for you. This time I'll look for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.